Hello, my fellow Genshin Impact players. Welcome. My name is Limetree, and today we're going to be talking about co-op in Genshin Impact. Specifically, what co-op allows you to do and what it doesn't allow you to do. My hope is that after watching this video, you'll have a great idea of what to expect when you go to explore someone's world or when someone comes to yours. So if you have never played co-op in Genshin Impact before or don't know anything about it, here's a quick overview, things that don't really need much explaining. It's unlocked at adventure rank 16. It's 2 to 4 players, and depending on the size of your party and whether you are the host or not will determine how many characters you can swap between. So for instance, right now on the screen, it's Twig and myself. So 2 players, and we each have access to 2 characters. If we were to add a third player into the mix, the host, or whoever's world is being visited, has access to 2 characters, while the other players just get access to 1. With 4 players, everyone gets access to just 1 character. And you can swap between these characters at any time, just like you normally do when you're not in co-op. When you're out of combat or out of domain, just go to the party management and change your character. But once you are in combat in a domain, you are stuck with whoever you have out currently. When joining someone in co-op, you cannot join someone who is a higher world tier than you are. You have to be on the same world tier, or they have to be lower. And as far as crossplay goes, as long as whoever you want to join is in the same region as you, crossplay will work. Alright, so that's kind of like an overview of co-op. Now we can get into some of the nitty-gritties of what you can and what you can't do. And so we'll start with the cans. So for instance, if it's not obvious enough by what's on the screen, you can do domains co-op. You can also do ley lines, world bosses, and other activities that require origin resin to loot. The only activity that requires origin resin to loot that you cannot do co-op is the Confront Stormterror weekly event. Not sure why, maybe it's just the style of the fight, but for whatever reason, that you can only do solo. Every other world boss though, domain, leyline, you can do co-op. From Frozen Doggo, Angry Flowers to the floaty cubes, you can buddy up with someone and get them done real fast. Origin resin works the same way as it does in co-op, as it does in single player. After these activities, if you use origin resin, you get loot. If you don't get loot. In co-op, when you use origin resin, it's only that the loot that you see is only for you and only the person that used origin resin. Multiple people can use origin resin, but they each get their own separate drop. That being said, there is an achievement where you have to complete 100 domains in co-op, something like that. You do not need to spend origin resin on those domains for the runs to count towards the achievement. If you wanted to just buddy up with some people and knock out 100 domains, you don't have to spend a single origin resin for it to count towards that achievement. Getting loot in ley lines, domains, world bosses, etc., it's pretty straightforward. You spend the origin resin, you get the loot. When we move to open world and free roaming while in co-op, it gets a lot more confusing, and it basically all boils down to one thing. Are you a guest in someone else's world, or is it your world that someone is visiting? And depending on your answer to that question will determine how restricted you are when free roaming in co-op. Let's start by talking about playing co-op in your world as the host. So very few things change for the host, but the few things that do also change for the visitor as well. So number 1, you cannot access quests, period. The icon that appears at the lower left corner of your minimap, it's gone. You can still do daily commissions, but you cannot access your quest log. Number 2, you cannot interact with most NPCs. This is a big one. When I say most NPCs, I mean pretty much all of them. You can still interact with the daily commission quest givers, but a majority of the NPCs, like Catherine from the Adventurers Guild, both of them, blacksmiths, crafting table, you cannot talk to these people. It doesn't let you. So if you need to talk to any of them, make sure you do it before someone joins you or before you go and join someone else. Number 3, a little bit confusing, but harvested materials from flowers, etc., are now a shared resource. So what I mean by that is if you're in a party and you see a carrot in the ground and somebody picks up that carrot, you're going to see that carrot disappear and you are not able to pick up that carrot. This is not to be confused with monster drops and ore. Monster drops and ore are not shared resources. So anything that a monster drops, everybody gets to see it. It's the same for everybody and everybody gets to pick it up. Same with ore. Somebody breaks some ore and 2 iron ore pop out. Everybody gets to loot that 2 iron ore. The shared resource is only for harvested materials like flowers, radishes, dandelions, etc. So if you want to be a considerate visitor, make sure you ask before taking the harvested materials from a world that is not your own. Some people may care tremendously, other people might not care at all, but it doesn't hurt to ask, especially if you do not know the person. And that sums up what changes for when people come and visit your world. Now let's talk about what changes when you visit someone else's world. Like I said earlier, all the things we talked about that affect you as a host affect you the same way as a visitor. So for instance, can't access quests still, can't interact with most NPCs, harvested materials are still shared, all that stuff is the same. There's just extra restrictions when you visit, and we'll talk about those now. Number 1, as a visitor in a world, you cannot open chests. Only the host can open chests. And when they do, you do not get the contents or the perks of that chest being opened. Number 2, you cannot spawn the time, combat, etc. trials. The little pedestals with the red sword or the bell, you can't start those. You can participate in them, and if there's a combat trial with monsters and they drop loot, you can get that loot, but you cannot loot the chest at the end either. The host can loot the chest and get those rewards, but you as a visitor cannot. Number 3 of things you can't do when you are a visitor. You cannot open the Shrine of Depths. Even if you have a key, you cannot open them. And if the host decides to open one and then opens the chest, again, it's a chest, so you do not get the loot of the chest, and you yourself cannot open the chest. By now, you're probably catching on to the fact that if you're a visitor in someone else's world and there's a chest involved, you aren't involved. And that's pretty much the case. The only things that you can open are things that require origin resin. But any chests, no matter where, just you can't. Moving on, as a visitor, you adopt all of the fast travel points and statues of the 7 that the host has unlocked. Even if you have more unlocked, you only get the points that the host has. Now you can freely move between any of them at any time, but you cannot unlock new fast travel points or new statues of the 7. And if the host unlocks new fast travel points or new statues of the 7 that you don't have, whatever progress is made on the host's map will not be reflected onto yours when you return home. So what that means is if you're adventuring with some friends, you're the visitor in their world, you're all kind of at the same level, same place, and you spend hours exploring, unlocking new fast travel points, new statues of the 7. When you go back to your world, all of those fast travel points and statues of the 7 that you unlocked, they are not going to be there. You're going to have to do it all over again. The only thing that stays as far as visiting and the map is concerned is the pins that you make. So any pins that you make before you go visit will be there for you to see when you're visiting. Also, any pins you make while visiting, let's say you find a cool place to farm some ore, you can pin that when you're visiting, and then when you return home, that pin will still be there. Last and probably the most disappointing is that you can't do the Spiral Abyss co-op. Spiral Abyss is really fun, and honestly, I'm enjoying it a lot. Being able to do it co-op would be a blast, but alas, it is not an option at this time. Things may change, and honestly, if they do, Well, this video was made during the 1.0 patch, so any changes that happen in the future that conflict with what I have in this video, I'll try to put in the descriptions below. And I mean, if it's enough changes, at some point we may even just do a new video altogether. And that about sums it up for the Kens and Cants of co-op. I wouldn't have been able to do this video if it wasn't for Twig, aka Killy, helping me test some things and comparing notes. So thank you, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys for listening. If this video helped clear up some things for you, or if you have some questions, let me know in the comments. I do stream on Twitch Monday through Friday, 10:30 a.m. to 4:30-ish p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to come by, say hello, hang out. I'm playing a lot of Genshin Impact, obviously, but I do other things as well. And as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to do my best to make as many Genshin Impact videos as possible. So if you have something you want to see, let me know in the comments as well. And that about does it. So we'll see you next time.